This happened at one of the most iconic and cultural institutions in the world. Yes, I'm talking about the Louvre Museum. On October 19, 2025, 4 or 5 people, they actually don't know, around 9 o'clock in the morning, they entered inside the museum with a horrible ladder, not so fancy as the museum. They treated guards. They went to the Napoleon. It's a place that you have the most important jewelry of the whole history of France. Actually, the jewelry stole from the gallery was from Napoleon and from Queen Marie Amélie. One crown that was damaged into the running of the criminals, and a bunch of jewelry, and I'm talking about sapphires, diamonds. One of those, they have 13,000 diamonds. Emeralds is one of the most expensive heist of history, on the history of the time. I don't know if it's too much, but it's around that number. They smashed the glass, they broke all the stuff around it, they stole the jewelry, and they run from the same place they were putting the ladder. Adding to the scandal that it's already too much, the chief of security of the Louvre, Dominique Buffon, it's a lady of 46 years old that right now she is suffering all the hate of the social media in the world because she was hired, diversity hire. She didn't have any experience, so they say that. I don't know, I need to check, but it's impossible to check right now. She is suffering the stress of her life, and right now all the social media and all the traditional media are destroying her life. Please be gentle with this lady. She should be suffering like crazy. Despite the theft, all the thieves and all the stuff, all the terrible damage that they made into the hole, right now in this moment, the whole people that they made this kind of stuff, they remain as unknown. Some investigators believe that this is an inside job, people that they were already working inside the museum. And right now, a bunch of questions are fooling around the internet. How one of the most visited museums in the world could be penetrated so quickly? What is this kind of protection that the French people have around their own history? And much more important, that jewelry is going to be recovered one time or not? So let's go for it. But before we talk about the new robbery, we need to talk about the most historical heist of the museum of all time. Yes, I'm talking about the Mona Lisa. In August 1911, the museums at that time, they had no security at all. Actually, it was super common to see homeless people living inside the museum. And that's where an Italian handyman, I'm talking about Vincenzo Peruggia. Oh my God, Vincenzo Peruggia performed the stealing. He waited in the small storage room until night. He stole it and ran away. You need to think about something. He was working as a handyman, so he had the keys. Everybody knows who was working or fooling around inside the museum. It wasn't really big heist after all. Peruggia was a fierce Italian nationalist. He believed that the painting of Leonardo da Vinci should be placed in some museum on Italia. Eventually, the humidity inside his own apartment started to deteriorate the painting of Leonardo. So he decided that he needed to return this painting because it's going to be destroyed by the time and, of course, the humidity. So he wrote a letter naming himself as Leonardo and saying that he needed to return the Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa wasn't the original name of the painting. Actually, the original name was La Gioconda. That was the name that Leonardo put it to the painting that he had. Actually, it was a practice painting. It wasn't really big and Illuminati stuff or whatever, but who cares? But that mistake was the mistake that changed the history of all time, because nowadays everybody remembers La Gioconda as La Mona Lisa. At that time, the painting was so unknown that the people working inside the museum they didn't notice that that painting disappeared. Actually, there was a bunch of other paintings from Leonardo that were much more interesting for the people, but not La Gioconda, aka La Mona Lisa. Only after a few newspapers started to report the disappearance of this picture, it started to become famous. Actually, they didn't have any picture of the picture. After that, he was arrested. La Mona Lisa was exposed on the Uffizi Museum like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something. He went to the First World War, but nowadays everybody remember as Vincenzo Peruggia as a big Italian nationalist that he stole the painting. And we need to talk a little bit about the French culture. Oh my God, I love French ladies. This heist touched the heart of the French people. Why? Because we're talking about Napoleon Bonaparte, we're talking about a bunch of history around it, and we're talking about the Louvre Museum. That is oh my God, how can I say how important this museum is for the French people? In France, you have something important that is, of course, ladies. Of course, I don't know, rats. Sorry. And Ratatouille, also, sorry, the rats was, it's impossible to keep going. The flag of the France, of course, and you have cheese, and you have nice food, and you have expensive restaurants. But Napoleon Bonaparte, oh my God, it would be nice if they recover all the jewelry and they find the thieves. That would be super nice, and of course recover the history of France again. Since Vincenzo Peruggia, you have a bunch of history. Thanks to the Lord, they didn't touch any of the work arts. I don't know. I think in the other part that we can understand that these people, they wouldn't go to something that is completely famous. Nobody's going to steal the Mona Lisa again because everybody's going to be looking around that kind of stuff. They went directly to the jewelry that nobody was watching, so it could be much more easy to heist. Also, you need to understand the budget of that money, because we're talking about a bunch of money. 88 millions of euros in jewelry is something that maybe you need to understand also that this jewelry, if they're going to be sold by the black market, because everybody's going to be looking around this jewelry, is going to be not much more expensive. We can say, I don't know, 20 millions. The main question remains, you will be able to stay in prison for, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, for 20 million euros? I don't know, let me think about it, because 20 million being in jail, I think it's something that we need to think about it. Maybe these guys were already in jail 1 time or 2 times. They don't care about going on jail. They don't have any issue on that. They know how to move around jails. They know how to move around prisoners, and they know how to survive, and they know how to avoid certain stuff inside the jails. But this kind of crime, in the other side, is going to be so embarrassed for the French people that they're never going to forgive something like that. I think if they catch those thieves, they're gonna have, I don't know, it's not going to be 5 years in prison. It's going to be really big amount of time on prison, because you have some of the jewelry was damaged. Actually, 1 crown was damaged. You also have historical stuff that is not going to be easy on the judge. You need to be careful with that. I think it's not going to be 10 years of prison. If these thieves, they are able to run away freely with no issues, with no any problem, they will be happily ever after. But in most of the case, these thieves, they're always caught. So actually, when I was editing this video, 2 of the main perpetrators of this crime were arrested in 1 airport on France, but the jewelry is not recovered. Well, that's the whole stuff. Keep going with the video. So that's the main question of the day. Are you able to be in prison because, I don't know, 20 million of euros? If I pay to you that amount of money. Would you like to go over there? Ladies and gentlemen, please like, subscribe to the channel en fijne dag.